Welcome back for the second portion of Joy in Our Town. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm your host, A.C. Dunlap, and our guest for this segment is Bishop Jerry Pierce Sr., founder of the Moses Movement of Central Ohio. He joins us today to share important information regarding mass incarceration, along with the social and economical factors that contribute to this issue. Hello, Bishop.
Good morning.
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my honor.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of the Moses Movement?
Yes. I'm Bishop Jerry Pierce, pastor of Miracle Cathedral, senior pastor, founder of the Moses Movement. Started it last year, went homeless for 30 days, and part of that being homeless was to bring awareness to mass incarceration.
Okay, so you said you went homeless, so that was a choice that you did?
That was a choice I did.
Okay.
Again, to bring the spotlight on mass incarceration. That's an issue not just in our city, but in our nation.
Okay, so as the founder, can you talk a little bit about your responsibilities?
My responsibility is just to keep talking about it. I'm like Noah when he talked about the ark. Every Sunday he preached about the rain. So every time I get a chance to talk, I talk about mass incarceration, the issues of it, the devastation of it in our community and all across the country.
Okay, so what exactly is mass incarceration?
Mass incarceration, they came up with the topic of that maybe in the 80s, and it was due from the prison numbers exploding. We didn't have a big issue with people being incarcerated, but due to the war on drugs, the war on crime, the numbers were explosive.
Okay.
So we created the word mass incarceration.
Okay, so you have a background in chemical dependency. How does that correlate with the Moses Movement?
Well, I've been working with the homeless now for 30 years, and it's a pipeline. Homelessness is a pipeline to incarceration. Incarceration is a pipeline to homelessness. A lot of people deal with drug issues. So that's when they had the war on drugs, and people had crack cocaine problems and marijuana problems. So it behooves me to be a counselor dealing with those that's on drugs and alcohol.
How do you feel that your perspective is different than maybe someone who just wants to help that population because of your background in chemical dependency?
Well, my perspective is different because I've been incarcerated. I spent 10 years in prison, and so I went through all that devastation, came home, couldn't find a job. Still now, 30 years and being a bishop now for 20 years, I still have barriers because of my criminal background. So I know what it's like for a guy or woman coming home from prison and have a police record, can't find a job, and how it affects them socially, financially, spiritually, how it devastates the family, splits the family up. So my voice is a little different because I've been touched by those infirmities.
So how did you deal with those infirmities?
I had good people around me. I had mentors around me. I had pastors around me that believed in me, and when I didn't believe in myself. I'm coming home, the last time I came home was in 1989, and I couldn't find a job, and I just got saved in the 80s when I was in prison. And I told the Lord if I didn't get a job, I was going back to prison. So I finally got a job. Okay. My resume being in prison 10 years and then gaps, so I didn't have a resume. So somebody had to give me a chance. And so somebody gave me a chance, and so I've been employed now for almost 30 years. So I needed good people around me, then I need to believe in myself because of the psychological warfare that you have in your mind and your spirit about the problems you have, you know, the devastation that you have caused. So, you know, it has to be a healing process. So again, I had good people around me. I started believing in myself. Church was the biggest part of my life that made that change. So we need to bring hope to the hopeless.
So how do you feel that mass incarceration affects our community economically, socially?
Yeah, it's devastating. The catastrophic consequences of mass incarceration. You look around now, 20 years ago, we didn't have a problem with all these vacant houses. So where are the people at? There's over 2.5 million people that's incarcerated. So we have people, neighborhoods, certain neighborhoods, it's like a bomb has been dropped off. It's been affected by mass incarceration. So you have young kids, boys growing up without a father. You know, their whole life, don't know their father. They got 1 hour to go to prison to visit him, and he might buy them a hamburger and get him a bag of chips and a pop, get an hour visit, then he leaves out and he hear the door The bar slammed behind him, so he has to get back to his life. So now the mother, she becomes the father. She's working 2 jobs. You can't live off of minimum wage.
Yeah,
You can't pay
definitely.
rent off of that. So a mother works 2 jobs, so the father's going. So it's so devastating, not just to our community, but to the family structure, even to the church. It's so devastating. So I think it's time, whenever we have a problem, God always has an answer.
Yes.
So we have to look for that answer. And I believe the only thing can change the problem that we have is the church. You know, so I believe that we've been set up. I believe this is one of the greatest hours. Barack Obama went to the prison system, and immediately after that, he released 16,000 people from the federal joint, which is exciting, but what happens when you get out of prison?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, after 3 weeks, the excitement goes off. Now you got to look for a job.
Right.
Now you can't get a job because of your police record. So the long-term effects of mass incarceration is affecting us, our financial burden in the community, our tax bracket. So if you got 2.5 million people that's in prison that's not paying taxes, so we missing out on that opportunity. So we have a responsibility to train them, to pray for them, to care for them, not just while they're in prison, but when you get released. When I was, September last year, I was living in a tent, and it was right by the freeway. So my son called me and told me one of his friends just got released from the Obama release. And so I envisioned that he was on this Greyhound bus coming. You know, we were praying and fasting. We've been in fast for about 20 days then. So when the Greyhound bus station, when the bus came around, I told my son to call and see if that was him. And I wanted to connect with him the same day that he got out. And we did connect. I haven't heard from him since. But the fact I extended myself. And so that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
You know, people got to live. It's devastating. I mean, imagine being locked up for 5 years, 10 years, and you in an 8x10 cell. And so what it does, you psychologically. So we have a big responsibility.
I remember I used to work for a newspaper, and there was a man who had been locked up, falsely locked up, but he was locked up for 20 years. And I remember interviewing him when he came out, and he talked about how so many things were different when he came home, like 270 wasn't complete, and different things like that. As far as somebody coming out, how hard of it is a transition to be locked up or incarcerated and then come back into a society that is different?
Yeah. Well, you know, you adjust while you're in prison. So that's all you know. So when you come home, Columbus has grown up. It's a big city. A lot has changed. So like now, applications, you don't just go get an application and write it out. You got to go online.
Right.
I'm still having trouble being online.
Right.
So we have to teach them, you know, IT skills and really work them through that process. So now you come home, you want to be a father, but you've never been a father. So you have to learn who's going to mentor you, who's going to teach you. So you're dealing with all these issues. Finding a job. Minimum wage never pays rent in Columbus. You know, it said you got to make $12 an hour to be in an average house.
Wow.
So if you only make $8 an hour, you still got issues.
Yeah.
So it said that most guys end up repeating in 3 years, end up going back to prison. And I believe that falls on us. You know, that we had to grab them and say, hey man, let me walk you through this and get you adjusted, you know, how to be a father, how to be a husband, you know, how to pay rent.
This has been a problem, an ongoing problem for years.
Yes.
But when do you feel that it really became a noticeable problem?
I think Michelle Alexander wrote a book, The New Jim Crow. And I believe when she wrote that book, it kind of just opened up everything. So it's really been a problem since the 90s, but she kind of brought it to the forefront. A lot of people, we don't like truth, and we had to speak truth to power. You know, the truth would set us free. So when she wrote that book, it was really like opening up Congress, Senate, the Republicans were in agreement with the Democrats, when before it wasn't a problem. Prison, period, is an $8 billion budget, $8 billion. So we talk about we don't have enough money. Well, let's look at it this way. I'm gonna be a politician right now. That's cut that $8 billion in half and invest that for guys coming home.
Yeah.
You understand? And free that money up for other things. So people now are starting to admit, but we haven't got no farther than that. They're admitting that we got a big problem. Yeah. We got a big problem here. I mean, 17-year-old young black men are getting life sentences. Yeah. That ought not be so. Yeah. I mean, I think people ought to do time for what they have done. but for life. So now you have devastating not only that young man, but his mother, if he got any siblings, so that now his young brother watching all this drama play out. So now I got a call from a lady who said she wanted me to pray for her family. She said her son just got sent to the same prison with his father. And I've been blessed, and I thought about, what if I was in prison with my father? What would that have did to me? And so praying for her, and she was so tearful and broken. She said, my son is with his father in prison. So that's what mass incarceration has done.
Wow. What type of statistics are we looking at as far as mass incarceration?
Well, again, there's 2.5 million people that's in prison. We have the biggest prison system in the world, and the biggest prison system in the world. We build new prisons. Just had a judge that was found guilty for selling beds, juvenile beds, and making sure that those beds was filled to lock people up. We have 20 million people in America that are ex-felons that has to deal with this the rest of their life. So the numbers are just so big and devastating. And so poverty now that we're in this realm of poverty, it's affecting the mass incarceration, the families, the prison systems. They're building new prisons everywhere. And nobody's in the bed, but they figured out that we can fill these beds up. And I remember going to jail and my mother's phone bill being $200 a month. She couldn't afford that. But I would call anyway. That was my lifeline. And so they making money off of selling ice cream and potato chips in prison. They making money off selling TVs in prison. They making money now. A parent has to get to prison, so now they got companies that will get you to the prison for $25. So everybody's making money while people are hurting.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, can you, if people were interested in finding out more about the Moses movement, can you give us that information, how they could contact you?
Yes. Contact me on Facebook, Bishop Jerry Pierce. Cell number 614-348-5961. Catch me on Twitter, same name.
Okay. Are your pieces interactive? Can people leave messages? Can they talk to you?
Yes.
Through those vehicles as well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, definitely. Well, we thank you again for your time. That's our program for today. Thank you so much for watching. You can also check us out on Facebook at WSFJ TV 51. Join us again next week at the same time for Joy in Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and is made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town coming to your home every week. Write to Joy in Our Town, 7790 North Central Drive, Lewis Center, Ohio, 43035.